Last race was Des Moines. Since then, I took a little bit of a break, caught COVID, got hit by a car, and tried to get back into some respectable level of fitness leading into the PTO Open, the biggest prize purse of the year. So we'll see how it goes. All right, it's race week again. This one definitely snuck up on me a little bit. One thing that I pretty much always do is break my season into two chunks, and I definitely am a guy that needs a mid-season break, and for that break, I take a full week of doing very, very little. So I extended the first half of the year a little bit longer than I had originally anticipated, and went and raced Des Moines. Originally, the thought was to get the Kona qualifications at St. George, and then race Chattanooga, then take the break then. But I felt really good during Chattanooga. I didn't have the race that I wanted in St. George, and there was a couple things that I wanted to try differently leading into Des Moines, and so went in there with a different strategy, made the decision to kind of extend that first part of the season. Obviously paid off, got the win, and so definitely happy with that. But that kind of put me against the wall for the PTO Canadian Open here, which is just a week away. I took the break right after Des Moines, went to Florida, and then had a little run-in with the car. Unfortunately, he thought that the bike lane was a place where he could drive, evidently, but thankfully I bounced well, and my bike was fine, and helmet did its job and everything. So it didn't really, it was a pain in the butt, literally, because that's where I landed. But it didn't prevent me from training. I was able to ride and swim throughout, but running, I had to take a little bit of extra time off of running. And so yeah, it's just been a little bit of struggle. Got back, and unfortunately both my wife and I ended up with COVID at some point in that whole 2-week window as well. And that just kind of, typically after a little bit of a break, it takes me a good week from the heart rate to kind of match where it should for power and pace and whatnot. But this time around, it's still on the way there, and we're 3 weeks plus into training now. So I would put the theme of the last 4 weeks as panic training. Things have been a little bit slower coming along, but they're moving in the right direction. For the last 2.5 weeks, I guess, Jackson Landry's come from Canada here, so he can go back to Canada to race. He wanted to do an altitude prep, and we get along well. He's a great dude. It's kind of funny because Jackson and I have probably competed against each other head-to-head more times than I've competed with. I think there might be one or two other guys that I've met head-to-head more than Jackson, but It's the same. It's not much different than me going up to Boulder and competing with Justin and Tim, and training with Justin and Tim, and then competing against those guys. Justin or Tim, Andre, and I shared a lane most of the spring, and we were 1, 2, 3 in Des Moines. While you're in the race, you want to rip each other's face off, but that's one of the cool things about this sport is, there's some guys that are just jerks, but for the most part, everybody is able to at least be cordial. Like Jackson and I get along well. We've trained together pretty well the last couple weeks. We can really, we have our numbers from our coaches, and we're both of the mindset that we need to execute our workouts. And so, if one person's numbers puts them a little bit ahead that day, we don't really let that get to us too much, or at least we can say that. My number one goal since I've become a professional is to win Kona, is to win an Ironman World Championship. But with what the PTO is doing and how things are progressing, these races are so important for the longevity of the future of professional triathlon. And the races that we as athletes own, and it's just a lot of fun to be a part of. And I really hope that we're paving the way for future generations in triathlon to be able to make a better living, have the level of prestige that a professional athlete, I think, should warrant. And there's a lot of things, I'm not saying it should just be given. There's a lot of things that we need to do. We need to show media companies and show bigger businesses that it's worth it. We need to do a great job of promoting our sport and growing it. And this PTO championship race in Canada is step one. A lot of steps that have been taken already, but this is like the biggest public step forward that we've made as an organization. So definitely something that is important and really exciting to be a part of. I think I'm sitting pretty well overall in terms of protecting my qualification spot. Right now I'm sitting as the number one American. I could easily drop out of that spot if anybody has a good race. I'm sure they'll score this race really high just because of the firepower that's on the course. I don't see a way that the winner is getting less than 100 points, no matter what happens. And add a bonus to that, and that means that the top guys are all there's going to be a lot of shuffling around. Do I feel pressure? I really don't. I hate to say it like this, but I kind of hedged a little bit and went into Des Moines and got the job done there, and that takes all the pressure off from this race. I took the win and put down a pretty decent time on a pretty brutal day overall, and I think that makes me safe for qualification, but by no means do I think the number one slot is locked in for the US, and so we'll just have to see what happens. It's definitely a stacked start list. You'd be pretty arrogant to say that Gustav and Christian weren't heavily favorited. They've both returning or reigning world champions in different distances, and haven't really showed to have too many flaws in their performances lately. Lionel's obviously a guy that it's going to be a hometown race. He's going to feel like he's got to perform there, and he's a guy that makes it happen when it counts. It's hard to say that those 2 or 3 guys won't be heavily favorited. But everybody's at a different point in the season, and I'll say it numerous times that this July race is kind of at a weird timing, because if you're really putting all your eggs in the World Championship basket, that makes it just an interesting block leading into this race. So I think there's going to be a lot of surprises. Maybe not in the top 3, but I think the top 10. If you pick the top 10, I think that you should go throw it all on one in Vegas or something. We have very few of this type of race to go off of, and there's a few ITU guys that are jumping up. There's a few long course guys who you never really know how they're going to perform in a shorter race. but also it's a 20-meter draft zone, and if we can keep the media motos out of the way, they got to give you a good view, but if we can keep them out of the way so they don't affect the race and everything stays clean, I think that really makes it for to set up where you got to stick to your numbers on the bike. That's one thing that I learned in Daytona. I think I was 22nd off the bike and ran all the way up to the podium, but on a 4-loop course, I was still in 11th place at the start of the last lap. But that's just because everything got so bunched together. And obviously there's some more technical elements here that weren't there, riding in a circle in Daytona. But, I think that if you're not able to be flying at the last 5K, you're not going to have a good day. I think it's going to be pretty tight racing.